"Mom, what are you wearing?" I gasped as I looked at my mother's outfit. "Don't you like it, dear?" she asked as she smoothed her miniskirt, watching herself in the mirror. I placed my hands on the side of my head and rubbed my temples. "Hi, my name is Stephanie. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Remember to also hit that notification bell so you know when a new video is posted. If you do this, your secret admirer will finally reveal themselves. Trust me, it really works." Ever since my father left my mother a few months ago for a younger woman, my mother had been on this craze to try to look and feel younger than she really was. When I asked my mother if everything was okay, she would usually respond with, "I'm fine, dear." But her drastic decision to do plastic surgery told me otherwise. My mother now looked young enough to be my sister. Don't get me wrong, I loved my mother, but her change had definitely affected my social life. A few weeks ago, I went clubbing with my girlfriends. There was cheering going on and a crowd chanting around someone. As curiosity would have it, I got close enough to see what all the commotion was about. There was my mother dancing between two guys who were twice as young as she was. Another incident was when I went to the mall with my mom, and while trying on an outfit, my mother was flirting with boys my age. And what was worse, they were flirting back. I can't even take my mother to the grocery store without her flirting with someone. One time I even caught a guy my age sneaking out the house at 2 a.m. I mean, how does my mother get more action than I do? Today was my 21st birthday, and my mother insisted that we threw a party to celebrate the occasion. At this point, I was not sure if the party was for me or for my mother to flirt with younger guys. While I chose something a bit more conservative, a pair of fitted jeans and a tank top, my mother wore a black miniskirt with a low V-neck halter top. To top off her attire, she wore red stilettos. "Mom, are you really going to wear that outfit in front of all my friends?" I asked. "Sure, why not, dear? I think I look absolutely fabulous," she said as she twirled in front of the mirror. "Can you please wear something else? Something that is more suitable for your age?" "Oh, honey, age is nothing but a number. You are only as young as you feel." My mother squeezed my cheeks as she left the room to welcome the first set of guests. I tried to enjoy myself at the party, but I knew my friends were gossiping about my mother. The guys at the party didn't seem to mind as I watched them trail behind her like wounded puppies who longed for a master. As I watched my mother throughout the night, embarrassment and resentment towards my mother began to build. My mother could play teenager as much as she wanted, but she was no longer a spring chicken, and she needed to start acting like she had some sense. It was time I did something about it. I needed to hook my mother up with someone her age, someone who would bring her down from the "I'm still a teenager" cloud that she was apparently riding on. This new mother was focused so much on trying to be someone that she wasn't that it was affecting not only her job but her relationships with her peers. My friend Diana told me that her mother found a boyfriend on a dating site, and maybe I should create a profile for my mother. So that's exactly what I did. I created a profile for my mother on a dating site. Of course, I used a few of her older photos to add to it. After creating the profile, it only took a few hours before the messages were rolling in. I didn't want my mother to look desperate, so I decided to check them the next day. The next day, my mother had over 100 messages. I did a thorough weeding out as I clicked on every profile of every person that messaged my mother. I narrowed it down to one guy, Nathan Houston. Nathan was a 45-year-old single father of 2 boys. He worked as a clerk in a law firm. "He'll do nicely," I said, as I stroked my chin thoughtfully. After chatting with Nathan for about 2 weeks, I decided that it was time for my mother and Nathan to meet. I told my mother that I ordered a book at the mall and asked if she would collect it for me. I told her I had a few assignments to catch up on, and I really didn't have the time. I told her that the time for the collection was 12 p.m., and she agreed. Next, I messaged Nathan and asked if he would meet me at the mall, at the bookstore, 12 p.m. I also told him what I, or rather my mother, would be wearing so that he would be able to identify her easily. Once he confirmed, I gave him directions to the mall and the name of the bookstore. The next day, I picked out my mother's outfit, and I begged her to put it on. After a few minutes, she agreed, and I sighed in relief. Everything was going according to plan. I asked Diana if she would drop me off at the mall, and she agreed. After my mother left, Diana picked me up and waited in the parking lot for me. I even asked her to borrow some of her clothes so that my mother wouldn't recognize me. I wore a cap, shades, and a hoodie. When I entered the mall, I lingered around stores that were close to the bookstore. I needed this plan to work. I wanted my old mother back. Around 11:50 a.m., I saw Nathan enter the bookstore, and my mother followed a few minutes after. The bookstore was relatively big, so it was easy enough to keep a good view on them without being too close. I was able to corner Nathan. "Hi," I said. "My name is Stephanie." I extended my hand. "You're Patricia's daughter?" Nathan took my hand with a smile. "That's right. I have a small confession to make," I said hesitantly. I proceeded to tell him that I was the one who created the profile for my mother, and that I thought he was the perfect man for her since they had so many things in common. I told him that once she gets to know him and he gets to know her, that I'm sure they would like each other. "If you agree to go along with this, you can't tell my mother about this dating site." I wrung my hands nervously, waiting for him to respond. "You must really love your mother to go through all this trouble for her. Your secret is safe with me. Now let me go find this woman that comes highly recommended by her daughter." Nathan smiled at me and walked away in search of my mother. I peeked from behind the bookshelf and watched as Nathan approached my mother. At first, nothing happened. Then I saw my mother laughing and chatting with Nathan as though they were old friends. That was my cue to leave. Over the next few weeks, I watched as my mother transformed into her old self. Her eyes lit up every time she answered the phone, and she was going out more with her old friends. She never told me that she was dating Nathan, though. I figured that when the time was right, she would tell me on her own. "Stephanie, honey, can you go down to the jeweler's at the mall for me? I forgot to collect my necklace and I would like to wear it tonight," my mother said. "Where are you going?" I asked my mom playfully. "Are you going on a hot date?" "Out, I'm going out," she laughed and said. "Now, could you go? The mall is closing in 45 minutes. She handed me the bill to collect her necklace and I headed to the mall. On the way to the jewelry store, I saw Nathan and I was about to say hi when I watched, in shock, as a woman with two little boys trailing behind her swung her arms around Nathan's neck and kissed him. "Hi, Daddy." The boys greeted him. I also noticed something on Nathan's hand that I did not notice the first time we met. He was wearing a wedding ring. I ran out of the mall without my mother's necklace. I hopped into the car and headed home. "Mom is going to kill me. Mom is going to kill me," I repeated as I drove out of the parking lot. I was devastated. I had to tell her what I saw, and I had to tell her how sorry I was. I was going to confess everything to her when I got home. Now, because of me, my mother would suffer another heartbreak. This was way worse than her trying to look like a teenage girl. Maybe I should have just left my mom. Maybe it was just a phase she needed to go through. I sighed heavily as I pulled into our driveway. "Mom! Mom!" I yelled as soon as I opened the door. I ran through the house looking for her, but my mother wasn't at home. I saw a note on the kitchen counter that stated Nathan asked her to meet him early. She said that there was dinner in the fridge and that she would be home later and that she loved me. "You won't love me after I tell you what I did," I sighed. I scrambled in my bag and found my cell phone. "Maybe I could get into contact with her before she meets him," I said as I dialed my mother's number. Her phone went straight to voicemail. "Mom, where are you?" I whined helplessly as I repeatedly dialed my mother's number, but got the same result each time. What if Nathan did something to my mom? My face turned white. If anything happened to my mother, I would never be able to forgive myself. I decided to call the police station to see if they could assist me. The officer said that there was nothing they could do about it until 24 hours passed. After 24 hours, if she did not show up, I could then file a missing persons report. My eyes filled with tears at the thought of something happening to my mother. In 24 hours, my mother could be in a trailer on her way to Cuba. My mother could be in danger and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. My mind flooded of all the stories I heard about online dating going wrong. I thought about going to look for her, but I wouldn't know the first place to look. My best bet was to sit tight at home and pray that she came home safe and sound. After a few hours, I finally heard the comforting sound of my mother's voice. "Stephanie, are you home? There's someone I'd like for you to meet." I ran from my bedroom and entered the living room. There he sat, Nathan. Go to hell, Houston. I could feel the rage building inside of me. My mother was nowhere to be seen. I walked up to him. "How dare you do this to my mother? I saw you at the mall today with your wife and kids. What kind of man does that? How long did you think that you would have been able to fool us before the truth came out?" I yelled. Nathan stood up slowly and said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me," I retorted. "As soon as I see my mother, I'm going to tell her what a two-timing jerk you are." Before Nathan was able to respond, I heard my mother's voice behind me. "Stephanie, what is the meaning of this?" "This two-timing jerk..." My voice fell away as I spun around to look at my mother and my jaw dropped. I looked back at Nathan and I looked at the man who was standing next to my mother. They were twins. Nathan had an identical brother. My face turned red with embarrassment. I wanted to run away and hide. I stood there at a loss for words, and my mother stood there demanding an explanation. "Well," I said sheepishly, and confessed everything to my mother. I apologized to Nathan for the way I spoke to him, and he accepted gracefully. I wish my boys were as protective over me as you are protective over your mother, Nathan chuckled. And, my mother said, Nathan already confessed about your little plot to set me up. Name. Nathan called over to his brother. This is Stephanie, Patricia's daughter. This is the man that you saw today at the mall with his lovely family. My children are teenagers and they are spending the weekend with their mother. I shook Name's hand and smiled. It's nice to meet you, and I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay. Just another case of mistaken identity. It has definitely happened one too many times in our lives. Name laughed as he patted Nathan on the back. I was glad that everything worked out. My mother no longer wore outlandish clothes, but clothes that were more suitable for her age, that still made her look attractive. And yes, people who meet us for the first time do ask if my mother is my sister, and I'm okay with that. I got my mother back, and now she's happier than ever.